at the end of the day, because well, you've got someone with the authority and somebody with the passion. And so we do, to this day, we still have a lot of cross-delegating involved in it all. I realized as I'm speaking about this, never told the staff that I actually do that with them. So if they're watching, they'll have just realized one of the management things I do. But yeah, so we put an emphasis on trainings that matter. And we put an emphasis, and this is literally where our culture came from. I look at this now and I'm still wildly proud. Chris Stock was the first bar manager of Bramble. Bramble's now 14 years old, and he hired Ryan. James actually came to us from a nightclub, and he was running the 350 capacity rooftop bar, and he came down to us one weekend to help cover managing, and has gone from being an assistant AGM at the worst point in time. If there was any person that was by my side when we were 7 months into opening and unhappy with everything, James was right there. And James was, he pushed and he drove, and he's taught himself more skills than I think he ever expected to learn in this industry and carry it through. And we really started just trying to encapsulate how we could have that staff culture. And we got that in place. What are we in now? 2019, so we're going to be 2016. We got that in place, and we've really been proud of that ever since. That kind of constant, that openness. I think it's quite an interesting thing. I find it strange when owners get angry if staff quit. I find it even stranger when owners get angry at other owners because the staff quit and went somewhere else. I think Jen Ag covered it really fantastically in her book, where she just said if the staff's happy, they're going to stay. If they're not, get over it. Like, it's like, I'd probably paraphrase that, but it was like, we wanted to have that openness and that transparency, because we're also in a really weird structure, where for those of you, I think the Drake is an exception to the rule, but let's say most other hotels in the world work like this. You have somebody that's usually very fucking rich that owns the building, but they don't have a clue how to run a hospitality company. So they then pay for a hotel management company to come in. That hotel management company, in my experience, usually also might not know their ass from their elbow. And so then what they do is they find other people to come in and run the different outlets. And then the different outlets, those people own those outlets, and they have to run them, but they have to work within the corporate structure and still answer to the bosses while having staff who work for them but get paid by... You see how confusing it gets, right? You can see how if you're a younger bartender as well, you're like, wait, but who's my boss? Because it says Ryan's name on the door, but my paycheck comes from this person. And so a lot of that culture became about overcoming these questions and creating that transparency with it all. So, how am I doing on timing? Oh, I'm okay. So I'm going to dive into ops, and this is usually where the questions start coming up a little bit more. So in the first year, the first trading year, not calendar year or financial year, but the first year of Dandelyan, we cleared 1.3 million net pounds. This is all going to be in. I'm not going to try and convert it. We did 1.3 million pounds in sales. And we were like, and I think our budget that year was, Dandelyan was projected to do over 4 million net. Just to give you an idea on how much we were plucking numbers out of fucking nowhere. Like, yeah, we had no business at that point in time even claiming we had a P&L in place. And we were, at our lowest point, we were down to 9 staff. We were doing 10K Saturday nights. And by 11:30 p.m. on a 10K Saturday night, you'd see the wheels really start to fucking come off. You'd see candles that aren't lit. You'd see drinks going without garnishes. You'd see a number of different factors that you just be saying, oh, fuck me, this ain't pretty right now. But you keep persevering, you keep charging on and everything like that. And so I'll fast forward because we're about to close it, so fuck it, let's celebrate it. So we're 4.5 years in business now. Last financial year, Dandelyan cleared 3.7 million pounds net in sales. 99% of that is wet. I'm not even going to talk about the fucking headache that trying to have a restaurant kitchen in another part of the building do your food is. But 99% of our sales are wet, and our product mix has never dropped below 75% cocktails at any point in time. In a financial year, we'll do 170,000 units across beer, spirit mixes, and cocktails and wine. It's a fucking beast. Like, it's absolutely insane to watch. And every single drink must go out looking that good. It must, except for the pixelation. Hopefully your eyes don't do that. See you, doctor. But every single drink must go out that way. We have a sequence of service in place for how we greet a guest, when the menus go down. How does the menu look on the table depending on what stage they're at? Have we asked if they want a drink? Are they okay? Cool, we'll turn it this way. There's a number of different steps. Some of those things, as I say that, we didn't always uphold those. But like, our belief was we could just hold ourselves to the highest standard possible, and everything would come through along the way with it all. So how we lay out Dandelyan, how we meet that kind of volume, I think is rather special. I'm incredibly proud of it, to the point where I even submitted a TOCC seminar on it, and we'll see if that gets approved. But the short and snappy version of it is that if we go, let's go back through actually. That guy. Okay. So, really fun thing when you inherit a building is somewhere along the line the architect decided to take the foundation poles straight through the middle of your bar. And we have a slight curve to this bar that you can't see as well. So 2 massive poles, and then we're talking about 18 seats along the bar, and then the best part of 95 seated in tables throughout there. Floor service is paramount to Dandelyan. So around here and around here, you've got 2 double set wells. And what we have here is this is all behind the bar, obviously. We have our expediter, or what we call zero. And so how would we gonna do, like, I'm talking on a standard night, we'll do 95% of our sales on the floor. People love to be at the bar, but it's a hotel bar, so everyone wants to have a seat. We'll get people standing on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and it's not like you must have a seat to be in the room, but yeah, most people want to sit down, and 95% through the floor. All on these gorgeous, lovely glass tables that decided to all start breaking around 9 months ago. But so we have zero right here, thanks to Tom Dixon. Zero is our expediter. We run it like a kitchen. So every single drink will come through zero, and zero will read off the checks. And you've got position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4. 4 is unquestionably never making a check. 4 is in charge of making sure the bar top is great, the bar top is tidy, cashing out checks, running. 4 is a host. 4 rather is a host. To the point where if you're not a very fast bartender, you'll probably wind up doing 4 a lot of the time, but if that's your bag and that's what you do, that's great. That was another way we wanted to make sure that we didn't only have one type of bartender that could only do high volume. We wanted to have Lorenzo, who's this lovely Italian guy that came from the Beaufort that I think makes about 50 cocktails a night. And came over. I still remember his first shift, he walked in and he still got a very thick Italian accent. He's like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, I've never seen my own tattoos bartending before. I was like, what? You're like 27. He's like, I'm a hotel bartender. I'm like, this is a hotel. He's like, this is not a hotel. I was like, all right, fine, fuck it. We can go along with it. So 4 and 3 kind of picks up the slack between 1 and 2 and 4. 3 in an ideal world would only be doing bar top as well, but we don't live in an ideal world. So then we've got 1 and 2, and 0 is standing there, and where checks are coming out. And literally, 0's responsibility is to control the entire flow of the bar. They expo, just like a kitchen. And so 1 and 2 are just making drinks. So to ballpark that, Dandelyan will do a cool 1,000 cocktails on a Saturday night, no questions asked. And 1 and 2 will easily make 650 plus of those 1,000 drinks to go out, right? 0 will 1 and 2 will pour spirits and add ice for spirit mixers, but 0 will then add the mixer and garnish and the straw before it goes out. 1 and 2 will shake the cocktail, but the freezers are situated at either pillar, so a lot of the time 1 and 2 will actually finish shaking the cocktail and pass it over with the strainer in it, and 0 will bring the glass out of the freezer when it's at its coldest and strain it all out. If we have garnishes that have more than 3 steps that I'd love to pretend we don't have, but we do have, all garnishes go through 0, except 3 and 4. They've got a little garnish station here, and they can crank on their own if they want, but if they're getting smoked, send it straight to 0. Because you'll have a drink, I still remember it, it's my fault, it was a shit garnish, shouldn't have done it, but you'll have a drink, peach and a pine cone. It was a really lovely drink. It had a touch of whey in there for texture, a really great like punch of peachiness. It was gin based. It was great. It came to the pass in a lowball. You had to put a soda top on it. Then you had to do a lemon wheel that had the middle cut out of it and feed the lemon wheel over the straw and put those two things in the drink. Then you had to find the pine needles that had all been picked and trimmed back into the perfect thing, and then get one of them in behind the glass, because it's peach and a pine cone, so you got to have the fucking pine on there, right? And then, just when you think you're about ready to throw the fucking drink over the bar at the prick who ordered it, you've then got to put 3 edible flowers on top of the lemon wheel and make sure they balance face up. Brutal. We said that we were going to run it like a kitchen, so at times we truly tested ourselves. At times, like, with these figures I'm spitting out, by the way, think about poor Asker batching all of this, by the way, right? At any point in time from menu 3 onwards, we've had at least 2 fermented products on the menu. So he's in charge of maintaining those and straining those off and running them out as well. He's also got to do the juice every single day too. We don't buy that in. We fresh juice every single day. Zoomexes don't exist in the UK either for some fucking frustrating reason. And so he's literally standing there pumping fucking citrus for the first 2 hours every day. He's a legend. No idea why the Thermomix is on the bar top. That's a fucking stupid thing. So, everything comes down to Expo, and then Expo's got this all set up with drinks going out with chits in front of it, just like you're running a restaurant. I would often do 0, and I will blatantly say that's just because I started to tap out around 3-4 years ago and couldn't fucking keep up anymore. So I would do a lot of time at 0. I also used to be partial to a drink behind the bar, and it was much easier to drink champagne when you're standing at 0 than any other point along the bar top. So I'll be cop a lot of shit online if I don't admit that to the Dandelyan staff watching. So I would then do that, or 0 would get all the drinks garnished, they'd be up, we wouldn't be screaming, we wouldn't have bells. All floor staff understood that the 2 positions they were meant to be were either at their table or at the pass. That was it. And then you get the drink up and you'd be stoked and you'd be ready, and because you're like literally fucking wide out, 10 checks wide and all the rest of it. And then we'd have the amazing floor manager, Jenny Willing, who is a powerhouse and one of the best Scots I ever know, and that's saying something because I do think it's the best country in the world. And Jenny would come up, and if I think I have high standards, which I kind of do, Jenny's are outrageous. And the reason Dandelyan was as successful and as beautiful and wonderful as it was the likes of Jenny turning around and never having any bones about turning around and pointing at a garnish and just being like, what the fuck's that? It's like, right, yes, okay, sure, I'll get back to fixing that one now, won't I? We encouraged everyone to question anything that anyone would be doing. Hierarchy is in place to ensure efficiency. Hierarchy is not in place because someone is beyond questioning at any point in time. And so we always wanted to make sure that staff really felt like they had a say in every aspect of that all. We spoke with staff about how the social media looked. At first, Ryan and I didn't trust the corporate hotel to run a social media account that wasn't completely fucking cringeworthy, so we registered the name and then pretended somebody else had taken it. And about 2 years into the relationship, we felt happy with it. Just like, we've all seen those corporate accounts where they literally, like, they make you want to fucking vomit. Why would we have this gorgeous bar that costs fucking millions and cranking on everything else, and then just have that shit Instagram account being like, who's ready for, I don't know, fucking Prosecco Fridays or something like that. We didn't want to have that, so we hid it. But when we did decide to do it, we then also made sure that we spoke with the staff about it. And when the staff saw something on Instagram that was wrong, when the staff saw something that was not okay, when the staff saw something, they knew that they could just come to us and we would fix it immediately. When it reached that point, when I started having staff being like, hey, there's a misspelling on this post on Instagram, I knew we'd achieved the kind of culture we wanted, which was that everyone felt ownership, whether they were in the building or not. Even though that we never allowed, no one ever says, this is my cocktail, because everything's created as a team. We'd managed to reach that point where staff were taking ownership. And it was really amazing to see. I'm trying to think. On the ops side of thing, there's so much of it that just comes down to being involved in the pre-opening phase of it all. I still remember we were building this hotel, and we went down and we're like, okay, cool, this will be like the Dandelyan prep room. Lovely, that's great. It's got like some good stainless steel. It's not a kitchen, but if anyone's seen the basement of White Lion, it was like a fucking getting a Tesla compared to what we were used to working with. So we were like, yep, this is great. Except for the fact that there's roughly 40 or so chefs working in that building, and not one of them believed that we knew our ass from our elbow, or that bartenders needed to have a kitchen to make a fucking cocktail. So we dealt with around 3.5 years, I would say, of constant back and forth. I would really only say in the last year, maybe 18 months, things have truly stabilized. And the list is everything you can imagine. Equipment getting stolen. We wound up having to lock our own prep room. Strainers going missing. I spoke about the frustrations we had with the restaurant next door running the food for Dandelyan. At one point in time, that restaurant was going through its own issues, and so they were struggling to keep up, to put it mildly. And I used to be able to put in food and walk through and then stand there and then see the expediter in the kitchen pulling checks coming off the printer and look at anything, and if it was for Dandelyan, just throw it up and put it in the bin. You name it, we fucking went through it at this point in time, and we still every now and again go through it. It's probably one of the things we fight for more than anything else internally, is just, and like literally, if you think anyone internally or any chefs in particular care about awards or any of that stuff, they really don't. Yeah, it's probably still one of the biggest fights that we have going on with, is just trying to make sure, it's just getting chefs to understand that we know what the fuck we're doing. So that was a real internal operational thing that, again, just kind of like, if anyone out there is thinking about going to work in a hotel or own their own hotel, this is the shit you deal with every day. And so, yeah, Dandelyan just did, 3.7, about 170K in units. And that kitchen mentality fed into something else that we really believed in, which is heaps mad shit. All right, I'm going to figure out how to explain this. So, very early days of White Line, Dandelyan wasn't even public knowledge yet. We got asked to do a seminar. We were like, yeah, sure, no worries at all. Ryan and I fucking love talking. We really enjoy doing presentations, and we love doing them together. We're like, fuck yeah. And they were like, oh, quick challenge for this one, you can't use any words. And we're like, huh? And they're like, yeah, we're just trying to keep it more fun, and we don't want any presenters standing up there with bullet points, so you're only allowed to use images. Like, interesting, good. I'll also profess that 99% of seminars Ryan and I have ever done, we're usually up at 9 a.m. on the morning of a seminar, having a coffee and just writing the thing there. Literally from the first time we stood up in front of a crowd, we have just had that natural ability to go back and forth and just kind of, yeah. So we had to come up with a way of talking about Ryan's and my creative process, and at that point we were already using heaps mad shit. Natasha Chetiawadana, or Chetty Bear now, she got married. Natasha is like the secret weapon of the Lion Company. Natasha is a partner in the business first and foremost, but she's a freaking marketing genius. Her company works for, I mean, if you see them online, her company has probably been instrumental in either creating their marketing program. They also do a lot of end-to-end operations, which is where Nudie Juice, just a random brand, might come to them and go, hey, we want to create this product. Her company has the ability to go, cool, we'll design it for you, we'll ascertain the flavors that work best, we'll find the manufacturing company for you, we'll find the packaging that suits what you need to do, and we'll design your rollout marketing campaign. To have that as somebody that you can just casually call on every now and again when you go, hey, have I got this idea? And she'll usually be like, no, that's shit. Having someone like that in our corner, the success of Lion Company and everything that it's gone on to achieve, Natasha has huge credit for that. And one thing Natasha's been wonderful at is making sure Ryan and I never take ourselves too seriously, but always making sure we have a real love of playfulness. And she's always made sure that we transfer that through. And that's kind of where Heaps Mad Shit came in. It was about trying to talk about the fact that, yeah, we're doing a lot of weird and wonderful stuff, but it's still at the end of the day just so hanging out in a bar is a bit more fun, maybe a bit tastier as well. And so then we had to do this seminar, and I basically decided that the best way we could describe Heaps Mad Shit was to find a ninja cat wielding a pistol riding a fire-breathing unicorn jumping over a rainbow. And to this day, since that first came about, I think that was the second talk we ever did, there's never been a Lion presentation that hasn't featured this picture somewhere in there. It describes our creative process, it describes the internet. We've used it to describe the internet a lot as well, because nothing says the internet more than that picture, right? But Heaps Mad Shit is that thing that we kind of keep bubbling underneath the whole time. It's, for those of you who never hung out with Ryan as well, he might come across as someone quite serious and nerdy, but he's without question one of the most inappropriate people I know, who loves to laugh, and in all situations will be wearing fluorescent kicks, no matter how formal the occasion. And I mean, I could probably take the award for the most underdressed at every single fancy event ever, but Ryan has this playfulness and this love of life that we always wanted to carry through in our drinks. And so we describe that as heaps manship. Yeah.
Sorry, not wanting to take away from
No.
really badass cat.
Yeah.
I just want to go back before we go too far down the line on this one. You had mentioned the kitchen culture versus bartending culture.
Yeah.
And I have a theory that it has to do with the fact that the kitchen culture has an actual formal education and a formal apprenticeship program and all that.
Yeah.
And by admission, when you were hiring staff, you were not even looking at the resume.
Yeah.
Just going for attitude. Do you think there's a bridge between the two, where we can bring what we do into a more perhaps structured system and then gain a little bit of that notoriety? In the long term, it's not going to happen overnight. But
yeah, it's not going to happen. I guess to that point, the question becomes, there are definitely venues that have managed to bridge that gap. I would say, like, to now see the Dandelyan back of house, it is just like everything is in sheets. I think one of the biggest things bartenders are guilty of is not actually following a recipe. I find it outrageous, but like the amount of people that do a sugar syrup and go, oh right, so I was chatting earlier, Lion sugar syrup is 1.5, or originally it was 1.65 parts sugar to 1 part water, because that is the most amount of sugar you can put in water and stir and dissolve it without requiring heat to get rid of it all. So that's what we work with on all our sugar syrups. But the amount of time you walk down a bartender, you'll be like, oh, what you doing? They go, oh, no, I'm just making sugar syrup. And you just stand there and you're like, but you're 200 grams over. They're like, oh, yeah, but I'm making 10 liters. It's like, it doesn't fucking matter. You're 200 grams over on, like, sugar, which is essentially more psychoactive for your brain than fucking cocaine. Like, I think bartenders are really guilty of really thinking that we can cowboy a few more steps than we can. As terms of an industry-wide implementation on that side of it all, I'm honestly not sure if it's necessary as well. There is definitely a lot of bars that just don't require prep. There are also, I don't think every bar in the world should do things the way we do it. I'm going to kind of get into that in a second, but when we talk about seeding change, it grows. But I think more of a formal education around bartending, and that is to say maybe creating something that if you spent X amount of time working at a venue, it was globally known that meant you had all these skills because you'd learned them all. I think something like that is a possible future for bartending. But there's a lot of aspects of the reason chefs are so good at their job that I would never want to see carry over into any venue that I'm a part of, ever. So it's kind of that yin and that yang, which I think our industry is really facing at the moment as we start, well, I'm definitely part of that generation, but as we start hiring the younger part of the millennial generation, just seeing kind of how much of the hard and fast culture has actually bred so many of the other issues that now exist as well, where you're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. Or like, there's so many, I won't get too derailed on that. But yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think Dandelyan is anywhere near the solution to that point, but yeah. So we deal with heaps of bad shit, and we always want to have something creative. And I still remember it was very much tied back in the fact that I was still working at Bramble and Ryan was up in Edinburgh visiting one time. And we were just chatting about something, and he was like, we were definitely probably going through our frustrations again. And he was like, there's a lot of bartenders out there that are creating something to make them seem better. He's like, but really at the end of the day, the number one thing I want to do is get people drinking better. And that has kind of underpinned everything that the Lion Company has ever done. I almost certainly paraphrase Ryan there, but it was this motivation that, like, we love a good drink and we love a good time, but there are so many different factors surrounding a good drink that are not present in our society and not present in our community that we really wanted to see how we could. We do things like making sure that every drink has a story behind it. And that's just a really simple way of getting people thinking about alcohol a bit differently. And 99% of the time, if people are like new to drinking in craft cocktail bars, they're first of all shocked that anyone spent so much time thinking about a drink, right? I'm sure you've all seen it as well. You're like, oh, I did this and this, and they're just like, but why? Right? And that's kind of it. But the Lion Company started expanding on what drinking better was. The first ever White Lion menu had a section dedicated to low alcohol cocktails. And every Dandelyan menu after the first one has had a boozeless section on it, because that is a part of people drinking better, is having that option. We did an incredibly interesting That is not to say whether it was successful or a failure, but let's just call it interesting. Project where, so White Lion has always made its own products. So I told you we make our own spirits. We worked with a brewery to make our own beer. We went so far as to filter the water we served and then remineralized it so that the water tasted the way we wanted it to. Because water makes up 75% of some drinks. So why the fuck would you not make sure that water is controlled and dialed into what you want it to taste like? If you ever drink tap water in London, by the way, you are without question drinking pee that's been recycled numerous times. The entire of London tap water is all if it's not filtered, it's just passed through the city filtration system, and that's how they've ran for over 50 years now. So running a bar in East London, we tried to have these little touches, and some of them didn't carry over to Dandelyan. But Dandelyan was definitely a permutation and an evolution of what White Lion was. All Lion bars are. It usually annoys some people that we talk about White Lion so much, because some people really fucking hated it. Hey, I have friends who are just like, your bar sucks. Like, okay, cool, fair enough then. Or like, and it was just really quiet sometimes, and no one wants to drink in an empty fucking bar at the end of it. It doesn't matter how delicious everything is. If you're the only person in a room that looks like a fucking monochrome 70s cocaine den, you're not having a good time. Or maybe you are, I don't know. But we continue to this day with constantly focusing on, we bring it back to White Lion. We bring it back to not doing something different for the sake of being different, doing something different for the sake of creating change. Get people thinking about things differently. We no longer use edible flowers on cocktails, but obviously if there was anything that Dandelyan became known for alongside the menu imagery, it was the incredibly pretty drinks that we did. And then that started. It was a really amazing thing to see the way so many different aspects of the venue pushed people in new directions. We were one of the first hotel bars that I was aware of in London that specifically said to all staff that they were not to greet guests as ma'am and sir. That they were not to greet guests as ma'am and sir. The Savoy just got rid of it last year. You think about it, right? You go to a hotel bar in London, you will pay between 14 and fuck me, the price only goes up, but a minimum £14, £17, £22 in the artesian. That's not slagging them off, that's just what they charge for drinks, right? So like, there are certain steps that went with being in a hotel bar. There are certain steps that went with being in a hotel bar in London. So we always said that Dandelyan would be a neighborhood bar in a luxury hotel setting. And that was how we took that entire idea of a hotel bar and turned it on its head. We didn't want the music to be background music, or even worse, Euro house. Background music, or even worse, Euro house, which a lot of hotel bars still play. We wanted the music to be music you noticed and actually enjoyed. We encouraged the bartenders to be themselves. We quite literally, like, have your tattoos on show, have your piercings on show. Like, be yourself as much as you possibly can. Piercings on show. Like, be yourself as much as you possibly can be. Never feel the need to put your hand behind your back. Never say sir and ma'am. And a lot of people will hear that and just go, yeah, of course, because you're not assholes. But a lot of that in 2013, like, there were multiple meetings just about how we were going, to greet guests, because everyone's like, no, you greet them with sir and ma'am. Like, no, we're not going to do that. They're like, no, but you must. And I'm like, listen, we're either going to find a solution, or we're just going to walk out of this room and do something you don't like. So what are we going to do to fix this along the way? And it kind of constantly tied back into this heaps mad shit, which is like poking fun at the industry a little bit. I'll be very honest about that. Sometimes we do like to not troll our friends, but we do like to make fun of what they might be doing, or make fun of the fact they're doing something that we might have done. Make fun of what they might be doing, or make fun of the fact they're doing something that we might have done previously. We like poking fun, and we think that bars should still be enjoyable and interesting. And so, what's that last thing? Sorry, I didn't interrupt. And so under heaps mad shit. Just to finish on that, the one thing we tell every bartender that we work with, the one thing we tell anyone that'll listen, is people turn around and go, but how do you come up with this stuff? How do you decide to do a bar that's run by weight and use coffee scales? Or that's run by weight and use coffee scales? Or how do you, I don't know, many different things. One of the latest drinks that Alex created actually used distilled snail shells, because it turned out that we didn't realize that how much flavor was actually involved in that side of it all. And so we did ode de something or other, ode de escargot or something like that. Ode de something or other, ode de escargot or something like that. And made it, how do you kind of evolve all that side of it? And it's the one thing we say to everyone, and it's what the note I usually like to finish on, which is to say, if you're out there and you're curious about how to be more creative, or how to drive the industry, about how to be more creative, or how to drive the industry forward, or how to be better at it at any point in time, stop looking at other bars. Our industry is going to eat itself alive if we keep turning up to each other's bars and think we're going to be inspired. Turn up to each other's bars because you want to have fun. I feel like bartenders get a certain point in their career because you want to have fun. I feel like bartenders get a certain point in their career and they forget that drinking is meant to be an enjoyable process. Like, don't turn up to a bar and think you're going to find your next cocktail idea, because if you find it there, that means it's already been done. If we're going to be original, we need to look everywhere else. Look towards fashion. You probably need to look everywhere else. Look towards fashion. You probably wouldn't guess whatsoever, but a lot of my drinks have actually always been based in the huge love I have for a lot of different fashion designers, particularly Vivienne Westwood. Look towards the coffee industry. You think we're nerds? Try fucking standing in the coffee industry. You think we're nerds? Try fucking standing there with a bunch of baristas and talking about total dissolved solids in an espresso that you rip through, right? Well, we're not fucking nerds. Can anyone tell me what kind of sugar is used in the different liqueurs on your back bar? No, right? We don't know nothing about what it is to be nerdy, right? We don't know nothing about what it is to be nerdy. Look towards other industry. Go and hang out with artists. Go and hang out with drag queens. Stay up late and make shit decisions, but not dangerous ones. And because that ultimately is what's going to feed back into your life. And that ultimately is what's going to move our industry forward faster than anything else, is originality. Is being true to who you are and presenting something that when you turn around and say, hey, this is mine, it actually is yours. Because no one had done it before. No one has ever touched on it. You're truly done it before. No one has ever touched on it. You're truly leading it. That's my talk.
Right on.
Yeah. This actually made. I still can't believe they fucking. I still can't believe they fucking printed it. This photographer came in and he was a total wally, and he was trying to get us to do all this cheesy shit where we like stand there with our arms folded. I love that bartenders do this because nothing says hospitality by looking angry with your arms folded, right? And he was trying to get us all to do this thing, and Ryan and I in our photo shoots, there's a never a more natural smile than when you talk about sex. So in most of our photo shoots, what we actually do is we talk about sex, which the photographer gets weird about. But you turn around and go, right, so we were having sex last night, and you can't help but start laughing. You smile last night, and you can't help but start laughing. You smile in an incredibly natural way that like comes down through the lens of the camera. But this guy wasn't having it. And he was like, no, we gotta do it. He's like, this bar's so beautiful. And we're like, yeah, but like, fuck that, like, whatever else. He's like, oh, well, like, I don't know, what do you guys want that? Like, whatever else. He's like, oh, well, like, I don't know, what do you guys want to do? Hold some flowers there? We're like, yeah, all right, let's do that then. That sounds good. He's like, what? We're like, yeah. And so this is Aiden, who is now running the aviary in New York, but he was with us since the beginning and gave us 3.5 amazing years of service. And we were like, yeah, let's do this then. Instead, it turned out I wasn't aware, but whatever that flower is, and I don't know the name of it, it's incredibly poisonous. And they only decided to tell me, I don't even know how the fuck it got in the bar, but I like, I don't even know how the fuck it got in the bar, but I like had it on my head, and then someone sent a picture in, and they're like, is that whatever flower? I'm like, oh, I don't know. They're like, yeah, the pollen off that, will give you a rash for like a fucking week. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good to know. Yeah. We made sure we never had any more of those in our bar after that point as well. As I said, I talk fast and I tend to swear a lot, but does anyone have any questions? In case you can't tell, it's an open book, so yeah. Yes.
So before I ask my question, I want to say thank you so much for your candor and all of this, because I think we live in a world where we see things on Instagram and everything gets presented as being absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And it's so refreshing to hear that a place as lauded had some serious growing pains.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much. That's kind of you to say.
Here and for people that understand that it's okay for things not to be perfect from the get-go, and
100.
everything's going right.
Yeah.
So that said, my question is around, it sounds like you were successful almost despite yourselves at the beginning. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how did it come to be so critically acclaimed when clearly there was some shit going on in the background?
For everything that was going wrong, I have to say that the original management team of Jenny was already a part of that point. Marcus Zelzanis, Nathan O'Neill, who's now bar manager of the Nomad New York. All of those guys for everything that was going on in New York. And for how understandably unhappy they were and all the problems we were having, they always kept up appearances. They understood the importance of being on service, and no matter what else was going on, just getting the job done. Which was the bare minimum we could hope for at that point in time. There were people that couldn't keep up with the pressure. There were people that were taking their pressure out on other staff members. And there was that core group of guys who ultimately, I think the bar was just not right for where they were at in their career. And now that we've all got a little longer in the tooth, we're all able to meet up and have a drink and laugh about it, thankfully. But yeah, I honestly do believe it's a huge credit for how much they really held it together in terms of being in front of the guest every day. And for Ryan and myself, what was part of the solution was also part of the problem, which was that we'd opened 2 bars so very close together with zero company structure. I stopped counting at one point in time, but I easily punched 120-hour weeks for months on end. It took so long for us to ever earn any money out of Dandelyan. We went months with like zero pay. I mean, like literally asking my girlfriend to pay rent and stuff like that. It was ugly. It was really, really uncomfortable. But White Lion and the prominence it was having allowed us to take a little bit more time to get Dandelyan settled before we started talking about it. White Lion, we didn't want to forget about White Lining. In case you haven't gathered, Dandelyan does pretty well financially, and we always felt fairly certain that it was going to do okay once we got it in place. But White Lion was a constant struggle. It's a lot more, it's literally trying to keep the lights on and stuff like that. And so I think part of the reason that we held it together was that we just probably over-focused on White Lion. And by not focusing enough on Dandelyan, we didn't highlight the issues that were happening. Does that kind of make sense? We definitely didn't do it intentionally, I would be honest, but I never remember a conversation where Ryan and I turned around and went, well, we better not fucking talk about Dandelyan right now, because boy, is that place a dumpster fire. But like, if anything, there were times where we had so much going on. We didn't really know what to talk about. We'd stand up in front of people and they'd be like, oh, we also, in the middle of all that, launched our own range of bottled cocktails in Selfridges that had a feature window. Yeah, it was busy. But yeah, it was just one of those ones where I think we made sure we capitalized on the momentum, and it wasn't. At times we were ignoring it, but we always knew we were going to circle back around. White Line was by no means perfect and had its own set of issues. No venue ever is. The bottled cocktails were just a head fuck, like just straight out the gate. Because someone came into White Line and were like, "Oh, well, if you can make me one bottled cocktail, can you guys make like 10,000 of these and we can sell them around the world?" We were like, "Yeah, of course, sure. When do you want them by?" Dumbest thing in the world. But yeah, neither of us are now allowed to say yes to projects. We and particularly with the Trash Collective as well, Kelsey is a fantastic filter to make sure that my enthusiasm actually isn't stupidity. God bless her. But yeah, it was very much, I think, the issues of Dandelion were not highlighted because we just had momentum over momentum. And I would argue that a lot of small businesses probably experience that as well at some point in time, where they choose to just capitalize on the momentum and just keep trying to circle back around and pick up on stuff. And yeah, but it's also, I'm a little bit more honest at times. I'm not very good at lying, so I just tend to be really honest, and when something's shit, I tend to say that it is shit. But there's also a healing process that you have to go through to get to that point with it all. And there were a lot of tears spilled over Dandelion. And there was a long, long time before we were really able to sit down and be like, wow, we got that so wrong in the beginning. Like, I could make flippant comments like, we didn't fucking deserve that tails plane anyway, but that doesn't solve anything, and that doesn't really acknowledge what the problem is. That's just me being unhappy in myself. And so I would argue we were well into menu 4 before we were really sitting down. We'd have little conversations. I could never thank the likes of James Wheeler enough for everything he did, but it was a long while before we sat down and were like, man, we missed the mark on that place, hey, and we fucking lucked out hard because of all the people involved. Just to put it in perspective, we pulled it back to 9 people. Dandelion now employs 34 people. Like, that's, yeah, we've doubled our volume, but we were already doing some pretty spicy volume with only 9 people involved. But yeah, there was definitely a healing process before we got to the point where we talk about it in that manner. I never said White Lion was the most talked about bar that nobody ever went to until we closed it, because it wasn't until we closed it that I had made peace with the fact that it ultimately, for all its pioneering changes that it did impact upon the world, it financially was not successful. And that, when you're an owner, only comes back to you. You can literally blame nobody else. So that's shit. Except to go, yeah, we fucked it. We can, yeah, in many, many different ways. But we also had a hell of a lot of fun, and we had a lot of success outside of just Beyonce visiting our bar, which is awesome, obviously. But it became one of those bars that, yeah, even now so Dandelion will close in 13 days, and it will go through a 2-week small renovation, and a complete change of name and concept and everything like that. And when Lioness opens, Lioness is still anchored in a lot, if not even more, of what we did at White Lion than before. Super Lion, which will then open in Amsterdam a month later, because you'd think we'd learnt more than to open 2 bars, but no. Super Lion, which was in the basement of where Cub is now, but we got an offer that we couldn't refuse, and we're moving it to a hotel in Amsterdam. Super Lion, again, is anchored in so much of what White Lion preached, which was innovation through control. Why serve water when you can serve your water? Why serve any beer? Even to the point where it took us about 6 months to get our beer collaboration on the shelf. So in the meantime, we'd buy different fresh hops, and we'd make distillates and tinctures out of them, so that we only sold 1 beer, which was just a craft lager. But then if you wanted to have an IPA, or if you wanted to have a pale ale, we'd actually spray the glass and atomize the glass with different hops, so that we could then increase the bitter units and the aroma, so that we could turn your lager into a pale ale. It sounds it's crazy. I was chatting with Gord. The drink available, by the way, tonight is called the Chablis, and it was on the first ever Dandelion menu. In fact, I'm 99% sure Ryan, if not Ryan and Nathan O'Neill together, they worked on that one. And Chablis was based in this really simple idea that it's like, why do people drink wine when there's cocktails? Because wine gives people something that's more accessible. And we didn't want to just turn around and start making wine-based cocktails or anything like that. And we were like, so what piques people's interests? And then we got a little deeper, and we love Chablis. We're fucking suckers for it. And there were a few aspects of it that we really liked. We love the citrusy, zesty part. That's not hard to put into a cocktail. What is really hard to put into a cocktail is minerality, right? Fucking sommeliers love to say the word minerality. Some cunt probably has it tattooed on their knuckles or something, but like, it's one of their favorite things. So we were like, right, well, how are we going to get minerality in there? So we were playing around with different things, and we wound up using bentonite clay. Bentonite clay is used as a fining agent in wine. If you ever get biodynamic wines that don't taste like skin contact, a lot of the time they might have used a natural fining agent like that. Bentonite clay is also at the opposite end of the scale. It's also a diuretic if you consume too much of it. So please go to cocktailsafe.org and make sure you're using it in the correct ratios. So we do an infusion of chalk into orange bitters, and we use Reagan's orange bitters because they put cardamom in there, and the cardamom and the chalk play together really nicely to do that. And then we garnish it. It's just a London calling outside of that. Beefeater gin. We actually even had our own Beefeater at one point, which was fucking rad. Beefeater did a limited release called London Garden, and we tried it, and we're like, yeah, that's great, we'll take it. They're like, what do you mean? Like, we'll take it. Like, what do you mean? We're like, we'll take all of it. They're like, no, this is like a limited release to go everywhere. I'm like, yeah, do all that, but we're gonna open this really fucking fancy bar, so how about you give us the exclusive entree listing of it? They're like, oh yeah, we could look towards that in London. We're like, no, worldwide. Like, no, it's called London Garden, we're a botany bar. No. So, thankfully Luke McFadden, God bless that wonderful human being, worked his fucking ass off and got that over the line with some help from Tim Stones and Seb. And so we even had London Garden, which was a beefeater that also had lemon verbena and, Donnie, my mind's escaping me, but something else, do you remember what it is? No? Okay, cool. But anyway, so it's just a London calling. Gin, Fino sherry, citrus, sugar syrup, and then these chalk bitters finished with a caperberry. Because the other really wonderful thing about some Chablis is alongside that minerality, you get this burst of almost salinity, but not quite that, and we wanted to put that in there. So we put a little caperberry in as well, so you get something to kind of carry the drink through. But yeah, that's kind of... Has anyone got any other questions?
I'm half being facetious.
Yeah, go for it. I love that.
On the White Lion. Half facetious and half really hoping for a way out there answer. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have any bar fights start because you had the toilet paper roll going one way versus the other way?
No, we never had that.
Marriages, man. That's bad news, right?
Yeah, we got iced. Obviously, that nearly started a fight one day. Everyone's, oh, we'll go ice the no ice bar. We had a staff member on who didn't work in the industry. He found it less funny and more of a personal attack. And we were like, no, Ben, it's a joke, calm down. So that was about the closest I think fights ever came in White Line. But no one ever really got into that side of it all, actually.
Because that breaks up marriages and stuff. So
I still don't actually understand it. It's fucking toilet paper and you're using it either way. But sure, whatever people want.
Waterfall or death.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Okay.
And that's what the patent says too. So
yeah.
It was Verbena and Thyme.
Verbena and Thyme. There you go. Thank you, Donnie. I knew I was missing something in there. I think that's pretty much it. I'm really glad no one. One of the things we do is we play our cards fairly close to our chest. So we don't talk about anything until it's launched. Like, people knew what Dandelyan was, but they didn't even know about modern botany. And so, now that you've heard this presentation, if you ever get the opportunity to visit Lioness, you might see a lot of what I talked about carry through in there, but it is going to be a completely different space. It is, we decided, much to beverage directors' bemoanment, if it burnt, burn it, was the rule. So if you look at Dandelyan right now, you know what it is. If you think you could flick a match at it and start something fun, we got rid of it. So there'll be, obviously we're not about to move 4.5 ton of marble for anyone that is thinking that. But anything that we could change into what we want it to be, because the hotel's only getting busier. The hotel's, as you can see by the sales, it's only growing. So how do we continue to meet this high volume standard in a more and more, not outrageous manner? We're actually it'll be a lot simpler in some ways. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming down. I really appreciate it. Cool. Okay.
I had a question.
Hey, good to see you again.
I had a payroll question.
Yeah. Go for it.
At that time, when things were going so well,
Yeah.
and you went through that 9 months,
Yeah.